3, 4, 5. Well, that's fair. So thank God we got Emily, because we're doing Emily's thing.
And it sounds like Jesse has to leave at 2, so I'm guessing we have to end the meeting at 2.
Well,
Will
once
we-
you establish a quorum, you can keep going.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, so the meeting's opened. I can take roll call. Phil,
Here.
Emily,
Here.
Seth,
Here.
Jesse,
Here.
and myself. If anybody cannot hear us from the public, please let us know. If anybody's recording the meeting, please let us know. Otherwise, welcome approval of the agenda. Somebody want to make that motion?
So move.
Okay, Phil, is there a second?
Second.
Seth, all those in favor, Phil,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
and myself. There are no minutes, so we'll go past there. Now we got water quality. Go.
All right, that would be me. Okay.
All right, have at it.
Let me share my screen. We just have a couple things left, so it shouldn't be too long. Okay, so we ended off on what is it? Recommendation or issue 6.
You gotta speak
Which-
loud. We can't hear you that well in here.
Yep. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, which one are we on?
We are on number 6. So regarding a enforcement oversight or implementation of the fertilizer program, need
Which
more
one?
property owner.
Last page. Last. Keep going. This page. Last, keep going, one more page. One more page. Oh, you gotta give me a copy. Number 6 is right there. Somewhere down here. Yeah, right here. Okay,
Okay, yep. Need more property owner education and larger effort regarding education, that there's a requirement for the license application. So there's a host of recommendations here up on the screen. Require licensed applicators to renew license in person rather online. This can be an opportunity to provide them with updated resources and additional education from year to year. Communicate with fertilizer vendors on island and come up with a labeling system for products that go with the BMPs to assist with informing and educating residential applicators. Require a short refresher in-person or online course for renewals and a renewal quiz. Develop a reporting mechanism for licenses, for applicators to report their fertilizer use from the year prior. Homeowner education, and then hire a dedicated staff that can oversee the fertilizer program and regulations, who can maintain and develop educational resources, update the town website, oversee new license applications and renewals, and who can work with NRD and the Board of Health to update the programs as needs evolve and respond to environmental changes.
you're gonna still have to speak louder. We have an air conditioning window unit, which is
Sorry.
browning everything up.
Okay. Staff can assist with enforcing the fee structure, which can help support the position and program, referring to the hiring a dedicated staff. Potentially seed the staff position with private funding donation. The staff could help to patrol the island between 3/15 and 4/15, so March and April, to assess if there are applicators applying before the open window. Hold a course each year for new applicants, and have an exhibit of native lawns at town properties along waterfront with educational signage to describe benefits. So there's a lot in this one, I
Can
realize.
you, when I printed it like over the weekend, I didn't have any of that, I didn't have any of that list. I had a much shorter list. Can you send that out?
Yes, I can send this out.
And if
Yeah.
there's any other changes from what I printed out on Friday or Saturday, that'd be great, but I didn't have any of that.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I can send it out.
All right, anybody have any comments about this, Emily?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Linda. And thanks for reading through all of those. I definitely provided a number of these as suggestions, and I will be really interested in what the other committee members and town staff think about them as recommendations. And as we may not have all seen them before today, maybe it's appropriate to have an opportunity to talk about them more later as well. But I think that there's obviously a lot more that we could do with the town's fertilizer and licensing program. Despite not being able to change the actual fertilizer regulations, I think that the licensing program in and of itself can be changed without having to change the regulations and the requirements to get a license. And there might also be some things that could be addressed in the BMPs, but I think a lot of these is just the way that the town interacts with landscapers around this licensing program. And there's just a lot of opportunities that we should try to take advantage of moving forward. But I'll be interested in feedback from others.
Well, let me go to this staff, because it involves a lot more in staff time and dedicated person, which I fully agree with. Jeff, do you have any issues with what's up there so far?
I honestly agree with pretty much all of it. I mean, I think it's there. I'd say the one thing that I'm not a big fan of is the private funding donation for the staff position. I think that might be great to get it started, but again, I think it's like having a long-term dedicated person to do it. And that's obviously something, whether you fund it through license sales. If Dave Franzuto were here, he would say paying people that way is never good, because that way, if everyone stops buying licenses, you lose that person. But I think that's something, right, is if that program's put together correctly, I think having that person in place to do that would be better. And I think it doesn't have to be focused solely on fertilizer. There's lots of other, and we start to see it in other plants too. There's lots of other really great guidance for landscaping in general, whether it's through like coastal resiliency plan or fertilizer, for planting native vegetation, maintaining native vegetation, doing with fertilizer kind of best management practices for managing trees and shrubs. The new Concom regs have a whole section on use and management and how to manage vegetation. That I think, for lack of better terms, having a town almost like an extension agent, like you see off island for like a lot of these ag programs, right? Where there's an extension, having a town extension person to be that interactive person would probably make a lot of sense. And I think that gets to that. So I would hopefully say that the town would fund that if we get it started, kind of similar to the energy coordinator. If someone wanted to like say, here's the money for a year's worth of contract, you guys need to take it from there. I think that can be fine, but I think that's something that the town should pay for over time.
Especially if we charge fees to cover that position.
But I think everything there is, I would agree with.
Okay. Anybody else up there? Seth, anything?
Yeah, I think the in-person things are really important. So I believe right now, if you want to become a licensed pesticide applicator, there's no in-person classes online or on Nantucket. There's online classes or going off island, which makes it easy for people to just say, oh, I'll just risk it and apply without a license. So I think what is up here about having in-person classes on island every year at the same time, like in the early spring or maybe late fall, could work. And I think having people interacting physically in person with the Natural Resources Department is a lot better than the town establishing some type of virtual class for this specific purpose.
And just to add to that, sort of an echo and support of what Seth just said, but also I think part of the concern in the past has been that through the online certification process, it's pretty easy for one person in a company to just take it and do it for all of the other workers of that company. And it's a lot harder to ensure that the people who are actually going to be applying the fertilizer are all individually getting the education.
That's the problem a lot of times. Jesse, anything to add to this one?
No, I think all of these are good, suggestions, so good recommendations.
Bill?
I wanna see it when they get send it around. It's a lot of material. To process right now.
And I agree with Jeff. It should be an accepted person in the town hierarchy. And I do agree with the in-person with Seth. So I think this is a really good start on this because this has been a bugaboo for what, 10 years since we passed the first round?
Since Article 68 went in.
Yeah. So I think this is a great, great list, but I agree with Phil. You should send it around so everybody can really digest it.
And I guess the other thing I would say is I certainly recognize that the idea of creating a staff position, that's like often everyone's answer, and it's a lot easier said than done. And I don't honestly know how much of a priority this would be for the town. The idea of private funding to get it kickstarted definitely came from the way that I think the energy coordinator position was started, and maybe even the water quality specialist for the town was started with some seed money back in the day. I think there would probably be a lot of interest in that if that was necessary or helpful to get something off the ground. But I am hopeful, Jeff, in hearing your input on that, that you would be an advocate for this within the town, however it and whenever it's possible.
Jeff?
Sure, I mean, I know Emily and I have talked about this, that I have budgeted and requested kind of an environmental educator for the last 3 fiscal years. And had it funded once and then it got rolled into a different position. And then this latest round, if it was just some money to hire a consultant if we needed it. But I think maybe a little repackaging to it could hopefully
Send it over the finish
send
line.
it over well, I mean, it's been over the finish line already and it got moved. So I think there's an appetite there. I think repackaging of the AVS and especially that would make more sense.
Well, let's work on that because I know they want your budget in like September.
But tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah.
And Jeff, please do keep me posted, because if you feel like somehow working in an opportunity for some seed money to get something started is helpful, then we should talk about how to do that.
yeah, oh, yes, I have some ideas for that. It may not be for the personnel, but we don't need to waste everyone's time.
Okay,
Right. Gotta be careful about private funding for something that's in the regulatory body. The
Yes.
energy coordinator is not.
right.
This would be in the regulatory body with insurance, with all the rest of it. You can't do that privately. Phil?
I just have sort of a basic question. In other words, this is a tricky subject because you can't have a inspector go on a person's property to see what is being applied. As I understand, in other words, that's private property, we don't have access. So there's always been this talk about education. But now I'm seeing something about licensing. Does that give this more teeth, or how does it give it teeth? How does that work?
They have to license anyway, but.
They're technically required
Required.
to license. The access issue will forever be a problem. I think the hopes are, if you have that dedicated person and you build those relationships with those companies, that, well, you may not be able to, drive down a long driveway or deal with that, the work you're doing up front to give the people the right tools for the job and to know that they have those curbs the need for, trying to solve a private property issue that's really kind of unsolvable. But I think that's there, and it's also a person that can work with homeowners to understand the rules that are in play too, right? So it's providing that education so people know the right questions to ask, but also the right way to do it, and then hopefully create kind of you want part of that community to also self-police and feel like, hey, we're playing by the rules. Linda is not playing by the rules. I'm gonna call the extension agent and be like, hey, we don't think they're playing by the rules. And then you can just go talk to those guys directly, or you can go visit them at their shop or wherever you wanna go. And say, hey, once,
And you send the property owner a notice.
yeah,
Now, the building department staff can go on people's property. The building inspector, plumbing inspector, the wiring inspector, they can go on people's properties. There is a certain category where there's a violation, they can go on their property and inspect without any permission, I'd say. So I don't know if this
Well, it's
type of
it's
thing
like-
would fall into that category, since you can't see the grass necessarily from the road.
well, I think that's always the issue, right? Like. I technically, through the Wetlands Protection Act, have the right to enter property where there's a known wetland violation occurring. The problem with fertilizer is if you're just watching someone push a spreader, it's very difficult to say,
What's in it?
I know for sure that there's a violation that's going. And if I go on and there's not a violation, then there's an issue where I've trespassed onto their property. So it can be kind of tricky, like, it's pretty easy to be like, I'm watching you cut down all of the trees, well, that's easy to be like, there's clearly a known violation. Stuff like this that's a little more nuanced is a little trickier to know for certain that that's a known violation.
Well, we gotta get the position first.
And I think if I could just add something else, we spoke quite a bit during the sort of boat use section when Sheila was around about the importance and value of just patrolling and just having a presence and being out there. And I've had conversations with a number of the major landscaping company owners who were very clear that when the regulations were first adopted, there was a big shift and the licenses were required within the industry where people were reducing the amount of fertilizer they were using on properties. They were under the impression that they really needed to follow the rules. And that over the last 10 years, because there has not been any kind of visible investment from the town in implementing them or educating about them, that they've just reverted back to doing whatever they want because nobody's paying attention anyway. And just the idea of having someone driving around with some magnet on the side of their car that says fertilizer enforcement or something gives this impression that someone's paying attention and would actually help have some kind of an impact. But it's just that demonstrating that investment, I think, too. It all helps.
Sometimes the threat of somebody is better than actually the person.
True.
Okay, number 7.
Okay, number 7. Need to review the septic regulations for their successes and failures, so determine the effectiveness of Board of Health regulation and septic upgrades. So I don't have any recommendations here. It's kind of more questions for you guys. This was based on public feedback and also just through interviews. So a couple of questions included, how does the Board of Health maintain their records for certificates of compliance? How often are inspections done? Does the town get notified when a property owner gets maintenance done, including pumping and repairs? So just curious for how to determine if the regulations are being successful or if they're failing, because it sounds like
I wouldn't keep this in for our plan at all. Having just dealt with the septic, and a lot of my clients have to deal with the Board of Health on the septic issues. They are iron fisted. They do get notified. If there's a failure, the person who's pumping it out has to report it. Whenever they do maintenance, they have to report it. Certificates of compliance have to be done through your engineers, yada, yada, yada. I don't think this can't be in our section because it's stepping on their toes. Personally, I've dealt with this for a long time now. Bill, who's on sewer,
Well, my wife is on the Board of Health. And the Board of Health is going through a transition right now. The head of Board of Health taking over from Roberto, but also yes, Malcolm McNabb, who is the chair of the Board of Health, has asked pleaded with Jim Cooper, who was the only person with any septic background who
Left, yeah. that's right.
on the board, and he was going off, and Malcolm pleaded with him to stay for one more term, which he agreed to do, not that he wanted to, but he agreed to, but I think it's very clear that the select board needs to know that there's gotta be at least one person with professional experience on the board of health, regarding septic system.
Well, Vesco got off, and there you go.
That's right.
And somebody from that area needs to get on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know whether this is in our purview or not, but I think the select board has gotta be, told by, recommended that there really needs to be at least one person on the board of health that has this technical expertise.
But I don't think it should be in the harbor.
So I don't know,
This is,
I'm just throwing this out there, but it's a real issue.
that is an issue, but I don't think it belongs in the harbor plan, because the Board of Health has
Right.
got its own thing going on over there, and they iron-fisted control of all of these systems. I know that for a personal fact. Mine failed. Had to go through this whole thing, and my guy had to report it. And every time, and here's another thing, when property changes hands, they are required by state law to do a Title V inspection. And a lot of these properties, longstanding family properties that are getting sold now are failing their Title V because they're required to have the report in order to sell the property. So there's a whole level of control over there at the Board of Health, and I don't think we should get anywhere near it in here and recommending anything. Does anybody else have a different opinion?
I guess I agree with you, Linda, to a certain extent, but I kind of am curious about it because, and I know that the Board of Health definitely is very involved and engaged in their regulations and what they do, but kind of parallel to the last one we discussed, the fertilizer regulation is actually a Board of Health regulation. And so technically it's incumbent upon the Board of Health to be implementing those regulations the same way it is to implement the septic regulations. And I think for me, it's more of a parallel around from the standpoint of like the health of the harbor, which is what this plan is about, and wastewater management being a key component of that. What should we have in here that just addresses the need to make sure that none of this is falling through the cracks? And maybe it's having a conversation with someone at the health department or Board of Health to just see, but I think it's just, I think these concerns that were brought up by the public were really just how do we ensure that these are also being implemented and enforced appropriately. So I don't know how to do that, but I don't think it's totally out of line to have something about our septic regulations in this plan. Maybe Seth has another idea.
We have to phrase this differently. I don't want to say that they're not enforcing. Or that they don't have, Title V restrictions came from the state, not here. I don't want to do anything that expresses an implication that they're not doing their job or they're not enforcing. So I don't like the way this is worded at all. And I think that it looks like we're calling them out, and I don't want to do that. So what we might do is support all efforts to adequately enforce the regulations, Title V, et cetera, as opposed to any of the rest of this, because they already do all of this. I run into this all the time with clients all over the United, where I have to deal with the septic. I wish I didn't. So I just don't want to put something in here that makes it look like we're questioning their ability to do their job. Well,
I mean, the Board of Health, half of their agenda every month is septic, so we don't need to tell them anything about that.
no,
I think that's just stating the obvious. I do question whether the Board of Health feels that they have any involvement in the water quality and fertilizers. I mean, the Board of Health, gets surprised by these things. They're told by other committees, you didn't, by the way, they found out that they're responsible for monitoring short-term rentals. I mean, that was
out of the blue.
that was not something that they necessarily were aware of. So, if we think that the Board of Health has a role in the fertilizer thing, we ought to have a quiet conversation with Malcolm and Dan, find out what you guys think you're involved in. They may say, that's not our job.
Well, it's a large crossover with the harbor plan and the health of the harbor, because the Concom has jurisdiction over the areas that are getting polluted by the fertilizer that are within our jurisdiction from state and local regulations. That's a little different. This Board of Health and septic thing, it may impact it somehow down the road, but the Concom's involved with, but we don't have jurisdiction at all over the Board of Health and septics and stuff. That is their whole department.
They are totally involved.
Yeah, so I just assume take it out or find something a little less accusatory. Or a suggestion to them. We're not here to make suggestions to the Board of Health, I can tell you that.
I think so, that's kind
Seth,
With respect, I totally disagree. In other areas of this plan, we have suggested that the planning board update their regulations. We've suggested that the Conservation Commission update their regulations. We suggest in this same section itself that the Board of Health update their fertilizer regulations. We suggested something about lighting regulations. Maybe the wording isn't right, but this isn't the final document that's getting into place. We definitely need to have a section here that says support the efforts of the Board of Health to enforce septic regulations and to evaluate the regulations to see how they could be better in the future, just like we've asked every other regulatory board to do. So we're not blaming them, we're not accusing them, just like we didn't accuse the Concom or the planning board. We're just saying the regulations exist as they do now. How could they be improved in the future? That's it.
well,
Thank
I
you.
think that your language is good, so if you want to type that and send it to Kimberly, then do that, because I think you just took my concerns out of the equation.
That sounds great to me too.
Okay, back to the septic. Only by birds.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so this one also doesn't have any recommendations, just because I know that the town has tried and attempted to do some things related to this. Fecal matter from shorebirds, especially near shellfish cages, is negatively impacting water quality. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah,
for
this-
me, if I may, this
Yeah,
this is an opinion of somebody. There's no data showing that this is true. The town has plenty of water quality sampling throughout, all around the islands. And maybe they haven't specifically looked at fecal or shorebird fecal matter on water quality. That seems like an oddly specific thing, first of all. In the water area, there's plenty of other birds other than shorebirds. There's water birds, gulls, raptors, whatever. It seems so oddly specific, and there's no data showing this is true. So if individual aquaculturists are worried about this, then they could bring us some data that then we could maybe use to make changes, or we could make a recommendation saying to explore this issue. But this is just somebody's opinion at this point. I don't buy this at all. Thank you.
These are all opinions, by the way, that people.
we're working with them, yeah. I would take it out.
If I may, I think that the root of this must be the state and the Division of Marine Fisheries now requires some level of bird deterrent for aquaculture farms to keep
Shoot them.
birds, others. All kinds of deterrents that people use, but they're required to do it to keep birds off of their aquaculture leases or attempt their best in an effort to curb out beetles from that. I think this is just kind of a badly worded repackaging of that, because most of those aren't shorebirds either. Most of the birds you see out there are gulls and terns, but I would think you could probably remove it and hope that the state regulations cover it sufficiently for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
But that's my guess is where that comes from,
Yeah, works for me.
but yeah,
Okay,
we've seen some crazy attempts, like Emil Benner on his lease had those big, like, look like almost like. Videotape hanging off the strings to try to like blow around or step away, and it works for about 3 days, and then they're like, it's not doing anything, I'm gonna go right back, they go right back, so.
well, how about the fake owls on top of people's?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked jobs where I've done non-lethal bird deterrent and mitigation. It works for a little while. You try, you know, physical barriers, lasers, owls, kites, loud sounding stuff, and the birds get used to it. So, you know, this is Nantucket. There's gonna be birds in everywhere, whether we do things or not. So if the oyster farmers and other aquaculture growers are following the state regulations, I think it's fine.
Great, okay, public access.
Thank you, everyone.
I couldn't print it all, but I brought my computer.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a different format from the other sections. I think because this was sort of the last one, we had more time to develop it more fully. So what you'll see is the full suite of recommendations. Kim, do you have it? Do you want me to share my screen?
All but 2 pages.
I can bring it up if it's easier for me to type or whichever is easier for you.
I was gonna take notes in this, so if you're willing to share your screen, that would be useful.
Bring it up.
All right, so the matrix is at the top like always. I will say I tried to compare the matrix with the recommendations that were actually in the plan, and I couldn't see like a perfect one-to-one relationship. So I don't know if the recommendations were just paraphrased a lot or whether or not some had been deleted. So ideally, I'd like to skip what's in the matrix, but just to note that all of it in some form or another, I've integrated into the recommendations. And in some places I have specific questions about whether or not you want to keep it. Oh, no, not the background section, Kim, the goals, objectives, and recommendations.
In here, oh, okay, hang on one sec.
That's the background. Phil, thank you for your comments on the background section, by the way.
Wait, so where do you want to go first here?
So I'd like to, Kim, maybe I'll just share mine if that's
Okay,
easier
sorry.
then. All right, so it is this. Can you all see this? Is it big enough? Let me make it bigger. I can zoom.
What page is that?
So this is the document that was shared for the public access section. This is the very top. First page.
I don't.
And I've,
So I think, Kristen, I think I messed up and actually sent them the background section and not the, this one. My
Yeah,
fault.
we don't have that. We have just the one with the pictures and all that stuff.
okay, I think this one did go out several weeks ago when we first thought we were going to be talking about public access because Phil gave me comments. So at some point you got this, but we can go through it together. It's not,
Who did it come from?
it would have come from Kim.
Yeah, it would come from me.
You want to send
probably
that
like
one
a
out
month
again?
ago.
Send it out again?
Yeah, I'll send it out again. I'm just, I'll find it and send it out again.
Yeah, no worries that we can go through it, you know, together too. Again, I'm not sure that there was a one-to-one correlation with the recommendations. So I'd like to just skip this again, noting that everything in here shows up again down below. And Phil, I noted your comments here. Thank you for providing them there in red if you guys can see it. And so as we go through, we can talk about them, or after we go through, I can go back and make sure that they're still relevant, if that makes sense.
I think one of the products of this effort, and I've been sort of working on this at Roads and Right of Way. There needs to be something, and I think in this day and age, there's something that's probably something on your phone that can be, I don't know whether it's part of the town's website or something, but if the public wants to know what the access points are for a certain beach, that something like this on the phone would be hugely helpful. I mean, just a somewhat related example is, the access points to the, Sconset Bluff Wall. We had a lively meeting last month with Roads and Right of Way because, we as a committee don't exactly agree on which all of the, access points are. And, so I think that when it's all said and done, if there was some way the public can see, what the access points are, this also gets to the whole one big beach thing, because everybody kind of assumes that, every road that goes down to a beach, there's a public way, and it's not necessarily. So anyhow, that's just a kind of an overall, when we finish this whole exercise, it was something that we can work to make available to the general public.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. And I think there's a recommendation. I was just doing a find for it, but I couldn't find it while you were talking. I think there's a recommendation that alludes to that. So when we get there, let's make sure that it is specific enough that that outcome happens.
Did you look at Phil may have just covered it. Did you look at the one big beach?
I just mentioned it to them.
Yeah, because not all of the one big beach have rights of ways. Andrew Vorse knows where every one of those is, especially in Surfside.
Mm.
And Tom Nevers.
Well,
And down on Hulbert Avenue, there's at least 3 down on Hulbert Avenue.
that's right. And
We
then
don't see.
we have on the thing that the previous one that you put up, Kristen,
Mm-hmm.
go down and it has sort of, I guess it's table 21. Public access sites in the harbor planning area.
Yep.
Those are,
Got a bunch of them.
yeah, I mean, this is.
I'll, if you want me to, I can hunt those down because I know who did them.
Yes,
You want me to
please.
look up?
Yep, that would
Okay,
be great.
I know at least 10 of them right off the top of my head.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think Phil is referencing the background section, which I shared with him and Jeff, just to get a quick review before the rest of the committee sees it. Seth, I see your hand is up.
So,
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know exactly how we'll get this into the plan, but with like public access right of ways, I've noticed that probably over the last 5 years, there's been some homeowners trying to do sly things to make it seem like rights of ways don't exist. There's a classic one. This isn't in the harbor area, but there's a classic one at the head of Hummock Pond where there's the right of way marker there. And then right in front of that, technically on someone's driveway, they put a sign that says private road, but they're blocking the access to the public way sign. And like there's another one in Squam Beach where the right of way sign is blocked behind a privet hedge. So they're there, but they're kind of like people are purposely trying to subvert them. And I think some of them in the harbor area might be like that too. So
they are.
trying to make
All the time.
trying to make a standard for like view shed, I guess, maintenance of those markers would be good for this plan. Thank you.
Bill,
Seth, thank you, Seth. This is red meat for the Roads and Right of Way Committee, and we are constantly talking about where we're finding markers that, so they love this stuff. And frankly, if you could send me a note with the ones that you were just referencing, I will bring it up at the next meeting, but we have documented in Roads and Right of Way 34 access points
Yeah.
to the beach.
all over.
And with a picture of the marker that is supposed to be there. Some of these markers are no longer, but this is what they go crazy over. And we're having new markers made so that we can go put them out. So this is something that if anybody thinks that there is an infraction, we would love to know about.
And they're all over the harbor.
But they're, in fact, on Hobart Avenue, there's one, on Henry Street where there's no marker. We all know it exists because it has a little path, but there's no marker. And there's another one on Colbert Avenue that not a lot of people know about at 55 Colbert Avenue, which was part of the Lilly property. And when I went there to go take a couple of pictures last week, there were people with their towels walking down there to go to the beach. And there are people who live on Colbert Avenue, they know that exists. So these are things that we are dealing with and roads and right of way, but if anybody in this committee knows of a situation that where they believe it's public and there's no marker, let me know.
Well, there's another aspect to this. They haven't necessarily been taken by the town and the 10-foot wide path given back, which is a lot of one, that's what happens in One Big Beach. There are paper roads all over the place going into the harbor, Madigan Harbor as well, that the public can traverse on if they have not been given up. And with the yard sales. Now, the yard sales are another issue, which is separate from the One Big Beach.
And this talks about this.
Yes, and so the yard sale parcels may be the same thing, in some cases may not be, but if there's a paper road that hasn't been yard sale, knock yourself out, walk down it. So there are people that are taking over paper roads that they have rights to the middle of the road, but they don't have a right to block the road. So there's all kinds of aspects of these access points that are, it just will drive you insane.
Yeah, I think all the proprietors roads around the island too, which there's different opinions about whether those are public or meant for abutters only. I mean, Nantucket is a crazy place with our land use, but yeah, I mean, I think I understand what roads and right of ways is doing, but I think we still need to make sure that we're supporting that effort in this plan.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you a question? So if someone purposely covers that up or takes it down,
So they,
what do you guys do?
We sent our team out, Alan Reinhardt and
Well, no,
Frank Eldridge and
I guess what I'm saying.
it's illegal to take a bound out first.
No, 1,000,000%, but a lot of these aren't necessarily.
But the ones the town has taken and done the path, the 10-foot path, are bounded.
we
Well,
directed,
no, yeah, 1,000,000 that they're bounded, right?
we
But,
directed DPW to go do it.
but there's no repercussions. So what's gonna stop?
There's no finding capability, and what should
Well,
we
that's what I'm
add?
saying,
We
it's,
should add that.
I mean, the DPW goes, I mean, one of the DPW representatives is usually on our monthly call. And we, if there is one, because we have now an inventory of markers, either flat or posts. And we essentially directed DPW, with the head of the DPW is okay, to go, replace it.
But the point is, what we may add here is to develop a finding capability for people who do this. And then bill them for taking their fence down, their screening down, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, the DPW is just eliminating it, but there should be a fine for them if they aren't paying to take it down and put it back and put the marker back. Or they're refusing to take down the fencing and stuff. I think we need to recommend that there be a fine capability for people who do this, knowing when they bought the property and bought that piece that they have a 10-foot wide.
I mean, I think it's just more of like giving roads and waterways the ability to deal with repetitive problems instead of just continually going back and putting it back to be like, you've done it multiple times, because I can think of properties now that I know where folks have been out a dozen times. To be like, here's the bill for putting it back in. If you do it again, then
Here's a fine.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. We have
It
to,
should be
we have
in
to
our
develop, it should be in our recommendations that there is a fining schedule or a protocol
Yeah.
for people who do this, and which we don't have in here right now. But that needs to be developed. If we're gonna talk about access, then we gotta talk about what happens if you restrict the public's access.
Oh, good. Jesse?
Hi, I'm gonna have to go. I'm sorry, I'm gonna miss the public access section,
Yeah,
but
Do you want us to hold this until you are at the next meeting? Because this is, a lot of these public access points belong to you.
What is our next meeting on the 15th? When's our next meeting?
No, I think it's 2 weeks from today, right?
Yeah, it should be,
22nd.
yeah.
Were you were hoping to get through it today?
I don't think we will.
I
It's
don't think we will
pretty
anyway.
long.
I could also like look at the written materials and make comments. Whatever, I don't want you to, stop just for me.
We're down to 4 members at that point. Technically, we can keep going, but that's too many people missing on this section. Frankly, that's half the group.
Or if we could just, I guess, I wonder if it's easier just to make sure this gets redistributed, if people could send comments in advance. Then we can review those comments.
I was
Can
gonna
I-
say, oh, sorry, just
go
to
ahead,
follow up
Jessie.
on that last topic, I agree to support the Roads and Right of Ways Committee, obviously, with the finding capability, if they can catch someone, right? I mean, that's the proof, like, how do you know that how can you prove that it's someone necessarily, the same person? But I think it's good to have that ability. And then the one thing I wanted to add, which I'm sure it's somewhere in here, is just how do we encourage, like, I guess, lateral navigation along the shoreline by the public, like, through this plan? And I haven't read the rest of the materials. I don't know where that would fit in, but just that continuous, access along the waterfront. Something that I think we should just look for opportunities to, enhance.
Sorry, Jesse, is that on water navigation you're talking about?
No, I mean like walking.
Walking, okay.
Yeah,
They can legally, chapter 91 or whatever it is, they can legally walk below the high tide line.
Yep, in intertidal zone.
Yeah.
right. I know. I guess I'm
To fish
Yeah.
down.
in the intertidal zone with a fishing rod.
Or a shotgun, you can be found.
But if you want to circulate this to me, I can make written comments if you guys want to keep going. But I gotta jump.
Okay.
I would say one of the real problems though in this, in the wet sand thing, the intertidal between low tide and high tide. The problem is, and we hear this all the time on roads and right of way, it's people walking along the beach, but they have dogs. And they, who keeps their dog on a leash when you're walking on the wet sand? So the dogs go all over the place, go on the people's properties, and the people have dogs and
Technically, they should be on leashes everywhere. That's,
Unless you get shot at, automatically.
well, part of our problem automatically, so if the owner has a dog, his
Massive.
dog gets crazy. but
Mean
the dog
dogs.
On his property.
I know those dogs.
So is our next, just before Jesse leaves, our next meeting is the 22nd of July?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yes.
Okay.
sorry, Jesse's there.
Yeah, Kim, maybe, since if we're gonna hop off now, why don't I integrate some of the comments that I just heard into this? And then we can reshare it with that. As you guys look at it, again, I wouldn't worry too much about the matrix. I am specifically interested in whether or not we're missing any of the needs and opportunities. And then there's a table at the very end of specific sites that came up either in the public meetings or in the surveys. And there is a column on potential improvements. And so if you could focus on any information about those sites and the potential improvements, that would be useful. And then the recommendations that you'll see are the recommendations from the last plan. So I literally just took those, copied and pasted them, and then updated them based on the conversations we've had, or I made notes on like, do we really want to keep this in as it is? So there's black text, which is from the old plan, red text, which is changes to the recommendation, and then a bunch of comments for you all in yellow. So
On your-
Yeah, so like, for example, on this one that you guys can still see my screen, right? So for like number 2 here, everything in black is existing text, except I added this red language, and then I made a note here that there was something about a penalty, which is exactly what we were just talking about. A penalty system should be developed. And I made a note saying this was in the 2009 plan, but not called out in the matrix. Was it done? Should we keep it? So it sounds like I'll go back in and add some language about that, but just as an orientation as to how this looks, because it does look different from the other sections you've been reviewing. I think it's like one step further than the recommendations you've seen already. So hopefully when you look at it in a couple of weeks, when you see everything updated, it will look very much like what you've already seen as you do
I
this
think
review.
you need to add 2 things to that matrix at the end that a lot of people use.
Oh, down here.
Are kind of dicey sometimes. At the end of, what's that street across from the, next to the, Marine Lumber, that everybody goes down with the kayaks to the creeks.
Oh,
Starts
that's,
with an S, maybe?
no, it's.
East
the-
Creek.
East Creek.
No. Next, on the other side of Marine Lumber. It's public, people don't realize it.
You know.
Spruce Street.
Spruce Street.
You gotta add Spruce Street and Washington Street Extension to this. Both of those are critical to public access. And the town owns both of them, and people don't necessarily realize that Washington Street Extension into those creeks is there. And then they don't necessarily realize that Spruce Street is a public access.
Oh, looks like a drop point.
You should be able to drive
So
across.
I think, Kristen, if you could get Jessie to give her comments, because I'm sure she has a lot to say. And it'd be helpful if you got those from her before our meeting, so we could see what she's added.
Okay, yeah, I'll ask her if that's a possibility.
Okay.
But I'll send these out to you guys now, just so that you have them, should you get to them before she does.
Okay, so why don't we
Okay.
just call the meeting then?
Good progress, though. Finish waterfall, man.
So we don't want to make a motion to adjourn it, or we just adjourn by consensus, but Phil made the motion, Phil,
Someone,
Seth,
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
and myself. Okay, and I know, Jessie voted before she left. There you go.
She said yes by week.
She said yes.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Kristen?